right, welcome, folks, to a fantasy preview that we have with a man live in the desert. And Red, I gotta ask, do you have a cactus Christmas tree this holiday season?
I don't, not yet, but there's still have some time to go. So perhaps I've got a tree on my shirt.
I do like that. It's funny. I've seen that the Griswold stuff has really come out big time. I, in fact, was able to procure a pair of Griswold pajamas this Christmas season, courtesy of Chelsea. Very nice, with some pants and a T-shirt to go along with it. And then just recently, our very own sister, the firstborn, Elizabeth, was showing us off a brand new toque. With the Griswold on it. So it's definitely a big thing. And last night, this has been kind of one of those years in fantasy football that's been incredibly interesting. I personally know how much I've learned from our father. I think you would agree with the same. And one thing he's always said is how much luck plays into fantasy football. I wanted to get your take on kind of some of the things that played out this season that we just went through.
Well, there's a few ways I think you can look at it. I think when you're talking about luck, the first thing that comes to mind is Batter-Ray and the Arizona Horned Frogs and the kind of year he had. But if we're looking at the luckiest teams or the luckiest owners, the ones that have benefited the most, only two teams really come to mind, and I can see, obviously, you look at the Cool Dudes. Now, you might ask, why are they lucky? Because they're at the bottom of the barrel, and they're taking it up the tailpipe. But if you look here, points scored against, no one had less points scored against than the Cool Dudes out of Yardley, PA. And didn't really do much for him. He was in it week 13. Had he come up with a victory, things might have been different. The other team, you could look at Team Irrelevance. Outscored by quite a few points, and yet still in that sixth slot in the playoffs, having less points scored against, scoring less points than teams that got knocked out. So I think the greatest beneficiary of luck this holiday season, apart from Batter-Ray and Andrew Luck, would be Eric Gruner and Team Irrelevance.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that Batter-Ray made his own luck in the sense that, he was the highest scoring team in the league. He did struggle a bit down the stretch, starting with a matchup against the Niskayuna Nitro about 4 weeks ago, his first loss of the year, and he then proceeded to lose 2 more games in a row. When you look at the Cool Dudes, I know like a couple weeks ago we talked, and you had said that Luke said that points are irrelevant, not to use a term of another team in the league, but that it's wins, babe, it's wins. And then, you look at the other side of the coin, and you look at a team like Ryan Niles and Paul Niles of Brothers Grimm. Now, here's a team that produced some of the highest point totals in the league. I think he's third or fourth in the league in points, certainly within the top 6. I know you have those figures better than I. But here's a guy that produced numbers to that level, obviously smoked the Cool Dudes in Week 13, and yet finds himself on the outside looking in. When a situation like that comes about, is there an argument to be made to a straight point system? Or do you still think there's some merit to the head-to-head system in this league?
I think there's a lot of merit to the head-to-head system. I do, however, think a realignment is in place for next year, at least should be talked about, because when you look at the total points, Batter-Ray's in his own stratosphere, 2,400 plus points. And then from the second scoring team in our league, Big Blue, to the sixth scoring team, there's only a 67-point differential. And the number 5 and number 6 teams, Niles and Sean, both missed the playoffs, and they outscored one of the playoff teams, Team Irrelevance, by an average of 200 points, 211 and 189 respectively. You add those up, 400 divided by 2, you get 200 points. They've outscored them by. I don't like a straight point system, but I think if you could mix up a couple more of these teams that are separated by only 60 some odd points, I think you'd see a better representation in the playoffs of teams that scored more points find their way in, teams that scored less points miss out.
One other thing I wanted to touch on, and we kind of got into it, but you and I were kind of bystanders to a recent altercation between 2 members of the league. No punches were thrown, but some hurtful words for sure. Makes me think of that Geico ad when they say the words really can hurt. And that was about realignment, which, again, you mentioned just moments ago. Some would argue you look at the NFC West and you say, geez, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago, you had a team in the Seattle Seahawks that got in with a losing record and then hosted a home playoff game. And then within a couple of years, you have San Francisco in the NFC Championship. You have Seattle winning a title. You have the Arizona Cardinals with the best record in the NFC, I believe, at this point. So we talk about realignment, but is there a case to be made that perhaps it's just an ebb and flow of the league, that there's going to be highs and lows of any conference in any given year?
I think that's true. There will be highs and lows any given year. And I think a team who's underperformed can beat a team who's performed better throughout the year. But as a general rule, I don't like, for instance, this year in the NFC South, that the Atlanta Falcons are leading at 5-7. I don't like that. That they're leading. There's nothing you can do with them leading, but I don't like that they're going to host a playoff game if they win with a losing record. I think something like that, you should be awarded for winning your division. There's obviously something to be said for winning, but when there's a huge discrepancy, I think there's something to be said for that too. And the name of the game in fantasy, not so much in real sports, is that when you're drafting players, auctioning for players, you're not thinking, well, in week 12, I only need 104 points because the opponent's quarterback got hurt and he didn't play, so that got me the win. You're thinking, I want the most points. I'm trying to get the most points. So that really is the best team.
And I would agree with that. I would agree with pretty much all that you said, but that, again, reminds me of a moment in that conversation which I'm describing where, look, let's just put it out there. Rick Runer of Team Irrelevant said flat out that he's been a team historically, and you can go back and look at the numbers, he's been a team historically that has not performed well in the regular season, and yet he's a 3-time champion. Some people would consider his team to be a dynasty in this league. So is he... As much as, like you said, I mean, people aren't necessarily saying, "Oh God, what's my Week 15 matchup during the auction?" Rick seems to be a team that underperforms during the regular season, but yet come playoff time, he gets in and he wins. So, is there something to be said for that? Is he a team that maybe he's got kind of a different approach than the rest of us?
Perhaps. I don't see it as he's planning it that way to underperform and then perform. I don't know how much control he has over how they perform. But no, that's true. He has performed very well if you look back in history. But I guess the question here is, should there be a little bit more benefit given to a team that scores to a team that scores a lot of points and has hundreds more points scored against them? I don't have an answer for you, but I think it's something to look into.
And I've always said this. The one thing I do not like about fantasy football as opposed to fantasy baseball is that I feel like there's not a lot of trades that take place in a fantasy football league. It's very rare to have a lot of movement. You were a team that said, geez, here I am, with a great record, a good team, but I'm going to make myself better any way I can heading into the playoffs. You went and made 2 really substantial moves. How do you see those moves playing out? And will those guys, would you say with absolute certainty, will they be in your lineup, assuming you make it till the end? Will those new additions make it to your lineup?
Absolutely they will. I think they improved my team a great deal. It's a situation where now I'm playing one of the players I dealt with, Emmanuel Sanders, which could come back to haunt me, but I really had no other choice with the likes of someone like a wide receiver like Evans on the bench every week. He's not doing me any good when you have running backs that wouldn't start for most teams in the league. So I wasn't going to keep him for his price. I think I paid $38 for Emmanuel Sanders. And so Evans at a $1 keeper, I believe, is a possibility. So why not plug him in? Mark Ingram at the time, I think, was around the 6th best runner. If you take it into account, he missed a number of weeks to injury. You don't add those zeros into the average. And Forsett, the same thing. He was top 10. I basically gave away $10 to Sean for next year. Sean looking ahead, looking forward, trying to plan. Not looking in the rearview mirror, keeping things in front of him. So they're definitely going to be my starting lineup, and I think they give me a serious shot to be victorious here.
Good shape. I know we've gone longer than we have in a long time, but we haven't done this in a while.
It's a playoff preview.
Let's just look ahead briefly. I got to be honest, and this is awful because they're the hottest team in the league. Maybe this is going a little far. I felt fortunate to get that third seed to play Rick this week. That could come back to haunt me. This is on video, so this is forever out there for people to see. I was grateful that I didn't have to play you or the Hurricane. Now, looking ahead to next week, now, Big Blue has been the hottest team in the league. I've talked to Rick. He said it. I think that you would agree. Big Blue is another team that gets better as the season goes on. But if you and I are able to pull out these victories this week, you're going to be faced with the number one team, for the entire season, the points champion, Arizona Horned Frogs and Big Blue. Who do you see when you look at the 6 teams that are left? You know the whole season, but you know recent trends. Who do you see as the favorite to bring home the title this year?
Well, I don't think there's any question. I think it's the Horned Frogs. If you look at Luck, Lynch, Forte, Macklin, Bennett, Foster, and the Seahawks, which is basically his entire lineup, every one of those players in the top 5 at their position. Not to mention Josh Gordon, who's suspended for 12 weeks, who's played great the 3 weeks he's been in. Traded for Macklin, Sean, we mentioned, looking into next year. Acquired Macklin from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I don't see any way how you could pick against them. Now, Big Blue, I think probably deserves. I know we're going to get into awards later. I think Mark Flack deserves a serious consideration, if not the award for manager, head coach of the year. Given that when I look at his roster, only one player jumps out at me, and that's Antonio Brown. So, smoke and mirrors, what have you. He's the end result is there with him, but I don't see it on paper, and I think that just speaks to his excellence as far as managing a ball club.
Totals, but 228 to close out the regular season. Either one of us would be lucky to be able to beat those two and bring it home, but. I think about Batteray when he came into the league, and it's something to remind teams of. Batteray came in, he took out a team that had just left the league, and I think a team that hadn't performed all that great. And within a few years, he's been the top team in the league. And during that time, he's also brought 2 children into the world. Excuses are off the table for the rest of us when you see what Batteray's done out there. I'm honored to just say that I gave him one of his 3 losses on the year, and hopefully, I don't know who I want to play, but hopefully I can make it to that championship game. And I guess if you make it to the championship, you don't care who it is as long as you're there to have your chance at it. And this will be the biggest. People forget this is the biggest prize we've ever had in this league. This is not life changing. Let's not overdo it, but. It'll be a nice little gift come Christmas time.